Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Good afternoon, each and everyone. It's 1503 p.m. and we are now going to start our webinar dedicated to the information system. I am Tardieu, the Secretary General of the International Network of Basin Organizations, and I wish you a very welcome to this, a very warm welcome. As you can see, RIOB does adapt itself. It's an organization. It does adapt its action and mode of work to this COVID era, and since last July we started a series of webinars dedicated to different important events for the basin organizations the world over, priority channels for the members of our network, but also for all of the partners of RIOB. And we are delighted and very happy today to have a working session with Geneva Water Hub, and I would be having the pleasure to share the conclusion of this webinar with the director of the Geneva Water Hub, Munger, who is also part of us today. Today's webinar, therefore, is specifically dedicated to the information system on water information system, mostly with respect to basins, national basins, as well as transboundary ones. We have, I think, kind of amassed within the network a considerable experience on this very question through the conduct and an organization of several operational projects. And I think that next year, too, this is a topic that we will see to it to continue feeding and fueling our thought of within the INBO and with all of the partners so wishing. This very experience has been quite widely transcribed into a manual, as we do call them at the RIOB, a manual on the information water information system that has been co-published by RIOB, INBO, and UNESCO in 2018 for the Brasilia Water Forum. And it was also at the International Office for Water that has coordinated the coordination of this work. I'm going to give the floor to him without waiting so that we can already get into the very vivid topic.
So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and good afternoon for some of you, maybe good evening for some of us from Eastern Asia and Southeast Asia. So my name is Haener from International Office for Water, and I am in charge of coordinating activities related to water information systems. And so today I have a pleasure to share with you some experience and some key points that we recommend in terms of global governance of water information systems. So in fact, these key points are what we saw during the last 25 years of our activity during 25 years, we are supporting countries and basin organizations in terms of water information system development. So we start with some generality, starting first with the fact that whatever the level of activity, it could be at country level or basin level, transboundary level, IWRM, integrated water resource management, requires to have access to a lot of different kinds of data, different topics of data. Of course, it is very important to have data about the description of the water resource itself, the basin, the rivers, groundwaters. And of course, it is very important to have access to data on quantitative and qualitative aspects of this water resource, hydrological data, like a result of laboratory analysis, etc. But it is also very important to have a capacity to combine this data on water resource with data on water users, infrastructures used by the water user to make the link with water resource, and also to combine this data with different kind of environmental aspects, risk-related data, health indicators, socio-economical aspects. A second important key point is that the access to data and information is fundamental for many activities, or quite all activities of the water sector. Indeed, when a country succeeds to organize easy access to data and information produced by the different data producers, it will facilitate many kinds of activities like sectorial water management, drinking water, irrigation, and energy, of course, a national planning and the basin planning, but also studies on climate change adaptation, risk management, reporting, whatever for SDG or for national statistics or for specific convention. Also, it will be useful for operational management, territorial management, emergency situation, and for the monitoring of regulatory aspects and information of the public. So the logic, considering these needs, should be that information system should facilitate the access to data produced by different institutions, some on national level, some of our local level, on different topics, but also should facilitate the access to data produced now by satellite image, and we'll come back on this point later, which are going to be more and more important. And the idea that based on this data produced by different institutions, national level, basin level should have a capacity to produce information and knowledge for, first of all, for decision making, but also for public information. But in fact, in reality, in many cases, this data is not accessible. So there is a loss of money because data is produced and not used. And also there could be a loss of money because some decision could be taken based on with lack of information. So what is the idea? The idea is to see that information system implementation is an opportunity to create a network between institutions producing data, between institutions producing and the one managing data and the one using data. In order to facilitate that, having access to this data, it will be possible to easily produce information and knowledge for deciders and public. But doing this work, the idea is not to look for centralization. At the contrary, the idea is to work in a decentralized system, letting the data at the level of data producers, which remain responsible for their data, and developing interoperability between the basin information systems and the information systems existing of the different data producers. So such principles are already applied, as example, at European level. Probably you know that European level is developing what we call the SAIS, the Shared Environmental Information System. And in 2008, the European Commission adopted the principles in order to organize easily the access to data. First, so I will go mainly on three of them. First one is saying information should be managed as close as possible to its source. That means we come back here to the point that the producer remains responsible for its own data. Information should be collected once and shared with others. So here we can see the part of organizing the sharing of data, in particular using web services. And last important point is that information should be readily available to public authorities to facilitate their activities and in particular reporting. So we have no time here to go more in detail on the other part, but as was mentioned by Eric, if you want to go to have more information about all the aspects of governance, you can have a look on this handbook that we produced 2 years ago. This handbook is presenting the 5 main processes that we consider when we deal with information system. First of all, data production, which everywhere in all countries, all basins are produced, data is produced by many institutions. So there is a need to organize access and to have a capacity to integrate data. Third point, it is very important to have a capacity to transform this data in information useful for decision making and for public information, to have a capacity to develop a dissemination of information. But all of this can only work if there is a good governance, if there is a good interinstitutional cooperation between institutions. So here is how do we implement these principles. Here is one example of Laos, where when we start the project working with Laos, we were analyzing the main institution producing data and managing data at national level. So we see that we have a Ministry of National Resource, Environmental Resource, Ministry of Energy and Mines, producing also data because they manage all the dams for electricity. There are other institutions at national level. But we can see that also at local level, we have data producers which have to be involved in data exchange. And so all these actors should be involved in the exchange of data, allowing the synthesis of data inside national water information system or basin information system. But at the same time, these systems allow that local actors could have access to the data of the different institutions that give access to their own information. And at the same time, what we do in some projects is that we use this principle in order to facilitate that local producer can feed the information system of different institutions. So the same principle also is applied at transboundary level. So here is one example of transboundary basin management for the Oyapock and Maroni between Suriname, French Guiana, and Brazil. So here also we consider the existing information system in each country, developing the network of exchange of information, including also the data coming from international level, in order that combining this capacity of having access to data with the need expressed by the partners, we have a possibility to develop different services like portal of dissemination, catalog of metadata, interactive maps, process for visualization of indicators, bulletin, daily bulletin, general bulletin, and other product and service like video, organization of webinar, and communication, because not all the population is connected to internet, so it is also important to prepare support of communication for local population. So doing this work at transboundary level, we take the opportunity also in this case to support the French Guiana territory to organize a specific information system which facilitates the access to the national French database, national level, but also to the local database existing and managed by the different institutions. And at the same time, working in the same way in different countries, this facilitates that at transboundary, we facilitate the exchange of data. Having good information system at national level, it facilitates the exchange of data and information between the countries following the purpose. So as example here, some example of visualization tools. So we make synthesis of all monitoring points in all topics. And so we have interactive maps. When we do a click on one point, we go directly to the data of the data producers. We can make synthesis per topic on surface water quantity, qualitative aspects. We can integrate data on water intake. And also we can manage indicators on water supply and sanitation. So all topics can be considered. And for information, we are also now developing some daily bulletin automatically produced with the data coming from different data producers in France and in Brazil. So in conclusion, so we have to remind that water information systems are key instruments of any water sector policy, whatever transboundary, national or local water resource management. We can see that development of interinstitutional collaboration is fundamental. First of all, because there is a lot of topics and a lot of data producers need to work as a team, each player having its own function. And we can see also that collaborative approach allows to involve the main actors within regular and automatized data exchange process. And this helps to release energies and to develop collaboration between institutions. And of course, it is important to adapt the system to existing resources and needs and objectives, to consider the potentialities of new technology. So today, we know how and to interconnect different information systems, whatever the format. So we can develop what we call interoperability. We have now a huge potential of remote sensing that can be used. And we have also possibility to involve final beneficiary with crowdsourcing activities and interaction. And of course, it is very important to take opportunity like today to share experience coming from other countries and basin in terms of data management and water information system. So I thank you for your attention, and of course I remain at your disposal for any questions.
Merci beaucoup à Paul Haener pour ce lancement.
Thank you very much, Paul Haener, for the launch of our meeting with the general overview of the challenges and a first cast or eyes cast on ICT. That it's the case. And I'm going now to give the floor directly to Madame Alexandra, who works at the National Center of Spatial Studies, and Alice specializes in space hydrology and is also an expert of a observation program, SWAT. Well, good day. When I start, yes, good afternoon, each and everyone. Alexandra, I work at the space office, and I'm going to give you a quick presentation of the potential of Earth observation, hydrology, and the like. So it's going to be not really technical presentation, but just enough to talk to you about the different concepts and possibilities.
Passe à la suivante. Tout d'abord, la première question qu'on peut se poser,
c'est quel est l'intérêt
d'utiliser le spatial
what is the interest of using space
en hydrologie pour la gestion des
hydrology for the management of water resources? Fact
la première raison, c'est vraiment qu'on a
besoin the first reason is that we really need we have increasing needs in the water field.
Il y a des besoins en eau, on va dire, un petit peu partout dans le monde.
We need water almost everywhere in the world.
Uniforme à la fois d'un point de vue spatial
the distribution of water is not uniform from a space perspective and from one year to another.
Au niveau des bassins transfrontaliers,
in the transboundary basin, the question of the availability of data from upstream to downstream. This is a request from the interpreter. Can someone please say to Madame Alice to speak louder or to get closer to the microphone? It will help the interpreter. Thank you. Now, to allow us to anticipate these changes in the hydrological, for all this we need data. And paradoxically, in many regions of the world, we have the in-situ networks that are reducing or diminishing both because of homogeneity. In other words, there are areas that are not easily accessible, problems of maintenance and resource availability, and it is exactly where the space, the utilization space, will allow us, of course, to have, first, because data are global,
et les données sont totalement superposables entre elles. Donc ça, c'est quelque chose d'assez intéressant.
Superposable, and it's quite interesting.
Sont libres d'accès pour tous.
So these are free data for all.
Qui commencent à se mettre en place pour le suivi de
we have also the use of certain hydrological and all space agencies
Aujourd'hui, c'est garanti jusqu'après 2030, donc c'est-à-dire que l'utilisation de ces données-là, en fait, et au jour d'aujourd'hui, également, le spatial permet de pouvoir observer plus ou moins bonne résolution l'ensemble des composantes du cycle
to have a good resolution of the water cycle, be it the rainfalls, evapotranspiration, etc.
L'humidité du sol,
the soil humidity, the variation, etc., and points on the lakes, etc., water points, water plans with the quality, etc., access to these information, and all this. The space can use of space. Data can also be a competitor to the in-situ network. On the other hand, the constellation has never been as important as today, and we are really at the spatial level on what we're talking about, the operational hydrology. In other words, the problems that we had on the space now are being overcome. We had the resolution, temporal resolution, that is now being improved because we now have a satellite that is looking at the same thing, and when we use more satellites, therefore we have the possibility to have also smaller water bodies and global coverage, because we have better sensors that are sent the world over, and because we also have improvement. This fosters and promotes the visibility. And I was saying that we have a continuity of data, and also which is an easy and continuity guaranteed, freely accessible, and we have also accuracy improved, both by the sensors, but mostly by the surface treatments that we now can use by using all of the data. We have very, very important improvements as to this accuracy. We are in a golden age now of space data with a quantity that is absolutely phenomenal and which currently is being under-operated or we have in hydrology what we call the SWOT mission, which is a mission developed between France, Canada, which is the project for the Earth observation, and which is a first mission that is dedicated to continental or inland water. This is a mission that is going to make it possible to have water meters, which is quite performing, and on all of the lakes, and you have also representations on this map that will be observed by the satellite. And we're going to have a first approach that is going to deal with the changes. We have availability of water on most continental and inland areas, so it's a real booster on all of the developments that we have now in France and the United States. And we are preparing this mission now. We have a whole development of operational products that are in parallel to finish with more information on water, surface water, and which is everything having to do with the land use maps that have an impact on the use of water, because be it on the development of the cities or agriculture, everything having to do with the soil humidity, the rainfall, the quality, etc., etc. All such data are important indeed. In order to make access to these data easier. And the follow-up presentation will center on some of the examples of what could be done with the Earth observation satellite. The first example has to do with the improvement of the knowledge of the hydrological conditions of the basin, the Congo Basin, which is a basin which is huge, 3.8 million square kilometers. And at that time, we had started this project, and there were about 30 in situ stations that were not operating well, and we understand that 30 stations or plants on all of the basin is not enough to have a knowledge of the available water. And what was done, in fact, is that we have used the space with the altimetry in order to import the 500 measure instruments that allow us to have altimetry elevation information with a retreatment on the past. And we produce a temporal series or chronological series. There we mute the interpreter because Mrs. Alice is not speaking right in the microphone, so we're doing our best. Thank you. And these information are available also on the INAVA site that you have here and there, open source. And these information are directly integrated on the water information system on CICOS to try and develop its own indicators and applications. So the presentation which will follow will talk about this. Another example which is going to really assume its significance is the follow-up and monitoring reservoirs volumes and variations, value variations. Currently, to be able to have access to the volume of dams, variations, would you use the surface, water surface that we combine with an in-situ model which allows us to have a knowledge, more knowledge about the variations of the volumes of the reservoirs. In fact is, with the next SWOT missions, everything having to do with the variations of the volumes of the lakes and reservoirs will be products directly accessible to all lakes and reservoirs, which are observable by the satellite. So everything having to do with the dam management and the SWOT, SWOT arrival, which will allow us to have better knowledge. Another example, on the quality of water now, we can follow the quality of water through satellite by analyzing the variations of the color of water. We cannot have access to all parameters, but we change the optical spectrum that changes colors. We have a project on the Lake Chad. You have an example of quality related, which we are undertaking with UNESCO. The objective here is that the space technology and use makes it possible to have a monitoring of the water quality through temperature, turbidity, suspended matter, chlorophyll E, as well as the algal bloom. And to treat these data on 5-10 years and to have a continuous follow-up on to have an ecological status and more indicators for the uses of water on the Lake Chad. The last point, which is now an application quite important of what we can do with the space. It has to do with the monitoring of irrigated systems alongside the rivers. This is a project which was done by Soger, which monitors the downstream part of the river Senegal with the knowledge of the irrigated surfaces through satellite. All these information will allow us to know the places where cultivated surfaces are irrigated in order to allow Soger to ascertain whatever statements reported by to ascertain that it really corresponds to what they say and to be able to collect that will validate, and this is an operational tool. There, I have presented you very quickly with the applications, with the different apps of the space that can also contribute. And following this, we are often used to bringing all the data in one point. Now it's in 2, if not 3 dimensions. Temporal dimension, and this requires some adaptation of these information system to water to be able to integrate them. But I really would like to insist on the fact that the space use brings data and makes it possible to have data that are global, easily accessible. The technology is in perpetual improvement. With the SWOT mission, and that these satellite data cannot be dissociated from the ground data. Regardless of the data, these information have use, and given the challenge of water, all of the data are useful. be it through drones or low-cost sensors. All of such data are useful. The availability of ground data is sometimes
et ces données-là sont vraiment indispensables aussi pour nous d'un point de vue
not well tapped into. So these space captured data makes it possible to validate and benchmark or calibrate. By adding to these data a modelization system to improve the follow-up, the monitoring, the floods, etc., etc.
Si on arrive vraiment à intégrer
really can integrate these three components in information system to lead to indicators, I think really, verily, that this can improve everything having to do with the water management. And one can imagine that at the end of the day, we will be able to have an inventory in quasi-real-time basis on the availability of water and its volume variations in both space and time. So there are real prospects of use of these data and to their integration on the water information system. I would like to thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free. I'll be delighted to answer them. Thank you, Alice. Thank you very much for the very good description of these new technologies, ICTs, information communication technologies, that are going to have an impact on the system. And thank you for the examples. We're now going to get into a first phase. And in order to present it to you, I'm now going to give the floor to Paul Haener, who is going to present you with the first poll that we would like to submit to you. Paul, over to you.
So before to start a period of question and answer, we would like to take benefit of the tools that we have now to launch a little survey and to have an interactivity with you. So presenting two questions, just to check that we were presenting the difficulties that have many institutions to have access to data. So the first question is related to that. Do you face issues for having access to data produced by various institutions at your level? It could be national level, basing level, or transboundary level. And the second question is related to the reason of having difficult access to this data and information. So it could be generally maybe a lack of strategy and cooperation between institutions to exchange information. It could be a lack of tools and know-how on who produce what and how to access to the data which are produced. It could be a lack of common language, having access to data which are not comparable. So this could be another difficulty for combining data produced by different institutions. And here we can have also heterogeneity of formats used by different actors with difficulties with lack of procedure for automatic data exchange and so on. It could be also a lack of digitized data or a lack of data itself. So sometimes the data is only on paper, not digitized. Sometimes there is also a lack of IT equipment. The partners are not equipped with servers and so on to facilitate this data exchange. Or in many cases, also there is a lack of trained human resource for organizing data management procedures on an efficient way. But also you can have other reasons, you can find other reasons to have difficulty for data exchange. In that case, we invite you to write in the chat to explain what are your difficulties. So here the question, the survey, you can, first question, you can click yes or no. And second question, you can click one or several answers related to the questionnaire. So the questionnaire will stay open up to the end of the question answers that we are going to have now. And before it will be closed before the next presentations.
So it is now the time for a Q&A session. First, short time. If you have any questions, please feel free to refer to it in the chat. And I'm now going to switch into Spanish because we do have a first question from our Spanish-speaking.
Una primera pregunta de la parte de nuestros colegas de la Dirección del Agua de España. Conchita Marcuelo, creo, Conchita, que tiene una pregunta sobre las dos primeras presentaciones que hemos entendido. Conchita.
Hola, Muy buenas tardes, ¿se me oye?
Sí, perfecto.
Gracias, muchas gracias por atender a mi pregunta. Es sobre nosotros en la experiencia nuestra española hemos utilizado fundamentalmente satélites de Landsat, de información del Landsat y últimamente de Sentinel, de la misión Copernicus europea, y hemos tenido bastante éxito en la estimación de las demandas de agua para regadío a través del índice de vegetación normalizado. Esto lo estamos haciendo a nivel nacional, a nivel de planificación, con una agregación a nivel de planificación hidrológica. Y creo que es un reto, una información importante que tenemos que incorporar de manera operacional a la gestión diaria de nuestros recursos hídricos. Yo creo que la escala espacial es nuestro gran reto. Tenemos servicios muy especializados para asesoramiento al regante, pero en la Dirección General del Agua estamos trabajando en buscar una metodología común a nivel nacional, a partir de las experiencias y las características de cada cuenca, para poder hacer una gestión diaria y operacional a través de la teledetección. Me parece muy interesante a través de la tecnología que nos ofrecen las constelaciones actuales de satélites, y eso era mi aportación. Gracias.
We're now going to go to the testimonials. We have for today's webinar several witnesses of great quality and geographic diversity. We are now going to start by the Congo Basin, the International Commission of the Congo Basin, the CICOS. We have just learned that Mrs. Julie Tenot, the Secretary General, is still occupied, involved in the ministerial meeting, and I now give the floor for CICOS still to George Gumlemvuga, who is the Director of Water Resources at CICOS, who is now going to give us that presentation. Thank you, George. Thank you very much, my dear Eric. Good morning or good afternoon to each one anyway. As you have just seen, and as Eric explained, we are presenting you here with the testimonials on the CICOS is experiencing the use of space captured data in the water information system on behalf of the Secretary General, who is now unfortunately not being able to be with us. As we were saying a moment ago, in Niger, what do we know and what's the situation? Without the data, it will be difficult, mostly in the field of water resource management, for just like a big river, just like Congo, to manage well and appropriately and to the satisfaction of all these resources. Hence, the importance of information sharing, as just been said by Alice, a basin of approximately 4 million square kilometers, where we have had a reduction of the network of measuring down to 20 or 30. It's a real advantage for the CICOS to evolve and to use this approach. Hence, our presentation contains some quick information that we have prepared for your attention. Now, the state of the hydrometric network in the basin, our system in hydrological information system, and our experience in the water resource monitoring and use spatial altimetry, and also the experience on and the data sharing framework agreement challenges and lessons learned. And we will be finishing this presentation with a small conclusion. As I was saying a moment ago, the Congo Basin during the 60s used to have more than 400 hydrometric stations in situ. And with all of the crises that we have had since then, unfortunately, we have seen that figure come down from 400 to 10 hydrometric stations. we did receive the support of the European Union, first with the MSD project. There's a little problem with the sound. There with the interpreters, the problem with the sound still continues. So now we are now continuing with FFEM and AFD are going to help us work on these questions, the hydrometric follow-up. And currently we already have quite a lot of data because we have had the awareness raising in order to rehabilitate in-situ data in the country. And as I has just mentioned by Alice, about 500 virtual stations, of which data we now have, and data producers at the regional level, but basically it's the different meteorological and hydrological data management offices that you can see the list here from all of the countries member to the basin organization and other services working also around it. We were showing the evolution here, where from we started and where we now stand. And there are more than 800 virtual stations. But 500 for which the data have been analyzed, and we have fine-tuned the series, but the availability goes above that. And we can still process, treat, and have useful series as per the needs of these data. Now our information system, hydrological information system, is one of the components of the overall CICOS system, but assumes several aspects. So we have information system of the Congo Basin, CICO, and our hydrological system does assume the three functions for any system to do: the storage, the treatment, the sharing, and the sharing of hydrological data, and for the implementation of IWRM, Integrated Water Resource Management, in a basin like ours. We are giving you here the links, the internet links, and the link is there, and it is being improved. We have had the support of our partners through AFD. Barely did the work with the support of the OIEau. You can consult our system, which is now being designed in full bloom.
Donc, en ce qui concerne l'expérience sur donc l'utilisation.
With respect to the experience in water resource monitoring using spatial altimetry, the CICOS has 6 members now who are sharing more than 80% of these basins: the Republic of Cameroon, the RCA, Congo, Gabon, the DRC, and Angola. Other countries riparian to the river are seeking to be part of the institution, but already the 6 members occupy more than 80% of the basin. In view of the dimension of this basin, even if we could put more significant means to rehabilitate the whole network, which in passing will be very, very expensive, the space altimetry for us will be a golden opportunity. As I was saying a moment ago, that started with a project with the African Union, European, and MSD, with AMESD, and with the support of the French AFD and GMES. So we are now fully part of this approach, with the number of stations that we have and with the support given to us by RD. Today, our data bank, as Alice did say, is available on HydroWeb platform, and the space data that we today are using come from Anfisat, the former missions, Saral, and JSON 2 and 3, and Sentinel 3A. So we do have, through these data that we have, we are willing to provide services to the population and to the basin operators. Among the upstream services are the development using data from spatial altimetry, among which the water level alert bulletin for navigation according to the water drafts that they would have to go through on some sites. We have updated the rating curves using the space altimetry data. And we also have designed or updated longitudinal stream profiles of some canals and water bodies. And we have been able also to identify through these data the sites that are propitious for hydroelectricity. So among the elements, upstream products on which we are now strongly supporting the navigation sectors, also as well as other that are hydroelectricity, acting thanks to the space data, the real potential of hydroelectricity in the Congo River. Now, concerning the experience of the data sharing framework agreement and the challenges and lessons learned. Bear with the interpreters, there is a problem of sound. On top of these protocols that have been signed by the governments, apart from that, we also, CICOS, have signed with specialized bodies, or bodies specializing in data collection. This being said, in terms of challenges, we need to be able to improve our training system, hydrological training system at the national level, and strengthen their capacity building, because at the regional level must be sent to us by the basis, the central. That is to say, the hydrological and meteorological central services. So this is a challenge to be lived up to and ensure the receipt and the dissemination of these upstream services, as we have just presented them to you. Why not in real time, according to the improvements, and as has been announced by Alice, it is an important component and information to say that CICOS with the Congo River has been chosen as a pilot basin river, and in the space hydrology group, which is now preparing the SWOT mission. We are going to improve even further our services with this temporal resolution, but also space possibilities that SWOT, the satellite for the Earth observation, whereby we will be able to update, if not improve, our tool of water resource allocation of the Congo River, which is a very important tool in the integrated water management at the transboundary level. We need also to work on the political echelon in order to allow an exchange of data in a smooth and seamless manner. You have 1 minute to conclude, George, please. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, in terms of lessons learned, we did understand that with respect to data exchange and at the level of experts, it's not a problem. It's done quite well in a thorough manner. But when we give these information to the admins and the politicians, there will be some red tape and bureaucracy that will stall or cause this to be belated. Microphone, please. Problem with microphone of the speaker. Bear with us, please. We cannot hear. Oh, lack of data. The lack of data sharing tools I have just mentioned here on the slide. Microphone problems. Bear with the interpreters. We cannot hear well.
Pour ces partages, ils veulent bien le faire,
no.
Mais souvent il y a manque d'outils.
They want to share, but there's a lack of tools. And we need also to mobilize the data to ensure the work in a continuous manner. We're saying that our hydrological information system, thanks to all of these data flows gotten from space, is a tool for the implementation of IWRM at the river. It is a tool that has been developed with the collaboration and the commitment of all of players, fully transparently, and it is open, and it is based on current data. CICOS, with the space altimetry group, will benefit even more from all of these data flow from the space in order to serve the cause of IWRM in the Congo River. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you,
pour, la
George, for your presentation as to the Congo Basin experience that has to do with the complex governance problems and a pilot aspect on the use of space ICTs, information communication technology. Thank you very much, George.
Introducir la próxima presentación. Cambiamos.
I will now speak in Spanish to introduce the next presentation. We will now change regions, and we are very happy to have with us Mrs. Maria Alexandra Moreira Lopez. She is the General Secretary of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. Thank you, Eric, and thank you also for the important information. I will now like to give you some information. I would like to mention that one of the fundamental axes that gave rise to the Amazon Cooperation Treaty back in 1978 was that importance given to the water resources in our basin to bring together our forces to use our water resources better. Under this conception of multiplicity of the functions of the Amazon rivers and their impact on the social and economical aspects, Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Suriname, and Venezuela decided to work together in managing water resources. And this couldn't be otherwise, since we share the most extensive basin in the world, which actually covers the whole of the Latin America territory, about 44% of this territory. This is therefore a highly important region for our 8 countries. In this regard, the countries have also worked in, well, about a decade ago, maybe a little bit more, we took different steps to be able to generate a common vision, first of all, for the type of management of water resources we needed in order to work in our region. For that reason, we created that type of work based on a transboundary diagnostic analysis and a transboundary problem, our vision, we recognize that the water resources are made viable thanks to participation, water exchange, implementation, extreme, different aspects, and through cooperation. One of the strategic lines that we set out in our work is actually the management of that information and knowledge. We share with the previous panelists when they said that the easy access to data and information on the state and the evolution of the water resources is the generator of a successful policy for the water resources. Integrated management of water resources must be based on the validation of data, which is in turn validated through fully integrated systems. We fully agree with this, and we are happy that the countries have decided to work in that manner. In this context, we currently have the strategic program for our basing, and we are currently implementing 2 projects that are working on 3 networks regionally around the Amazon basin. One of the fundamental pillars, as you can see on this slide, is actually the regional monitoring of our ecosystems. The basin is one of the ecosystems that draws attention for our work group, and we are now developing the Amazon hydrological network, the regional water quality monitoring network, and the network for the erosion, transport and sediments monitoring network. In this regard, what we are trying to do with these 3 networks? Well, we want to have fully integrated monitoring, access to regional information. We want to also strengthen the technical and technological capacities of the countries and within the public powers and authorities which work on this. We also want to generate protocols for the exchange of this information. We want to have a regional system with harmonized samples and analysis methods which can cover at least 2 points in the basin. We want to disseminate the knowledge about our reality in the Amazonian basin. We want to also perform different technical training actions. We already have some pilot actions in some countries. We want to strengthen cooperation at the international and regional levels with our countries and also with other key partners outside of our region. And we want to support compliance with international commitments. So in a nutshell, these monitoring networks, as I said, are under the process of design and development, and the networks will be set out and will be based on experience and capacity installed by the member countries. In further stages in the consolidation of these networks, we will make progress on the implementation, the harmonization and developing of the actual data. For example, for the hydrical quality monitoring application, we want to have information from virtual stations in real time for difficult access regions. Regarding the network on sediment transport, we also expect to incorporate teledetection data for automated follow-up and monitoring of hydrological processes. We are, as I said, at the design stage for these networks. Can we go back? Thank you. For instance, I do consider that the Amazonian hydrological network is the work that is the most advanced. As the colleague from the Congo Basin said, it is complicated to sit 8 countries around a table with different representatives, technical representatives, political representatives for the conception of the network to begin with, also to establish the different governance guidelines, to harmonize the different methodologies, but it is possible. The disposal of the countries is there, and this is why we are determining that the model that we want to use to cover, and we have also agreed that the network be based on a given platform for interoperability of data, so we can determine precisely the different basic features and the hydrological elements for each part of the basin. And in phase 1, we want to have 125 stations, which are already existing stations. For phase 2, we want to move that forward to 218 stations using different stations across the region. And one of the problems that we are seeing at the moment, apart from the general issues that were mentioned already by the colleague from the Congo Basin, is the lack of funding due to economic reasons. And this actually puts us in a scenario which is very hard for countries in the post-COVID-19 era. We have many other commitments, and there are other priorities for the funding of projects, and I think this will have a negative impact on our projects. As long as the water quality monitoring network, the premises that we are following are based on the use of different typologies of stations and sampling sites. The priority use will help us generate this new network. The priority of use of these hydrometric stations in the network, the priority of the stations, the representativeness of the monitoring sites based on the interest of the region. Let's not forget that the Amazonian basin is highly complex. In many areas, it is difficult to place those measuring stations, and also the measurement of basic field parameters to develop further, to develop our work. Well, we currently have 3 phases for this network. Phase 0, this is where we are at the moment, and this is the definition of the conception, the actual concept of the network, by establishing 111 monitoring sites. We are discussing the parameters that are going to be measured, the frequency, the other logistics issues for access and publication of data. Then we have a very similar methodology to other basins for this type of work. And as long as the sediment transport and process network, it is a newly created network. This is under the umbrella of the Global Environmental Facility. We're working with their funding, and this will allow us to establish a baseline for the follow-up of the current status, and also identifying ETS hotspots, also the generation of an integrated satellite system with a coverage of approximately 800,000 square kilometers of the basin. And then as part of the actions, we have the common protocol to implement and validate satellite data for access to regional scale available in the Amazon region, the definition and location of ground station, technical training, and the agreed execution of actions with different priorities. And then finally, what are we going to do with all these data? How is interoperability going to work? Well, we are working so that member countries can have one Amazonian regional observatory. This will come alive in the next few months, and it will provide the information provided or given by the countries. It will include environmental data, geographical data, etc. And this will add value. This observatory is based on a system for relevant information for the monitoring of strategic processes, and it will be a tool to support public management, since the administrators of water resources must have access to this type of data, which are relevant, current, and up to date. This observatory will be the body that will receive this information from the countries officially and will process it and have data analytics, satellite imaging, and interoperability, so we can have a situation room in the area of water resources for the Amazonian region, where we can also receive that technical information and also add value for the decision makers, for the political decision makers, and also for the public managers for their work at different levels, both local, also subnational and national levels. This official information provided by the different countries. I do not want to make myself very long. Thank you for giving me the floor and the opportunity to explain what we are doing. Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra, for your contribution. Your presentation is an example of something that's very interesting, also very complex, and bringing together many countries. Thank you.
We're now going to go to another scale.
Nous voulions vous présenter l'exemple.
After two transboundary basins, we wanted to give you the example of a country, and I'm now going to give the floor to Minister Niokhor, who is rather the director of water resource management planning in Senegal, who is going to present us the point of view of a country who is very committed in these transboundary border countries with the Senegal, the river Senegal. Thank you, my dear Eric. Good morning, good afternoon, sorry, everyone. I am the director of the DGPRE, but I'm also with my two associates as a director of information, Eric. As Eric said, I'm going to share with you a testimonial from the Senegal with respect to water resource management. Among other missions interested to our department, we are in charge of the follow-up or the monitoring from a quantity and qualitative aspects. Next slide, please. And as you can see, in the summary, we're going to share with you this issue. We're going to address this issue and exchange with you on the hydrometric but also piezometric monitoring, and we're going to talk to the needs to respond to requests from different actors, the solutions implemented by the DGRPRE, and also talk to you about some of the weaknesses and the areas for improvement of our current system, and to talk about the IWRM system that we are supporting with the OIEau and the outlook. The issue of water resources at a national level are, to talk about it, we can talk about it both quantity and qualitatively. We are suffering a pressure with respect to water collection and catchment, so we need to use more and more and develop tools. And as you can see in a map, there is a strong pressure in the west of Senegal with a strong collection, and other areas where there is less collection. From a qualitative standpoint, we have on some water tables and in some areas, some of them do not have a very good water quality, including with the presence of salt and fluorine. Next slide, please. And follow-up wise or monitoring wise, we have surface water monitoring network, as you can see before you on the map. These networks refer to some hydrometric stations, and from the level of water we can also know about the flow, and we monitor some chemical and microbiological parameters. Next slide, please. As far as the piezometric network, we do have a dense piezometry network. Indeed, we have to strengthen it further, and Senegal is here, as you can see, divided into zones or areas that are the subject of very close monitoring. The monitoring, most of the monitoring is done in Basco and ACTO, but in some areas where we have some pressure, the monitoring is done on a monthly basis. There are also stations or piezometry stations where we have set up an automated monitoring system, that is to say, level recorders. So this network allows us to fill our information system, but over and above this, we also work and interact with users, mostly agriculture, industry, the municipalities, universities, etc., etc. These actors, we share with them data that allow us to feed our information system. Next slide, please.
À partir de ce réseau de suivi et de cette collaboration qu'on a eue au niveau des acteurs, la DGPRE a développé.
The DGPRE has also developed IT-based applications. One of the landmark application, which includes almost all of the hydraulic works in Senegal, is the water resource management system. We have the borings, we have also the collections, we have the water, surface water catchment areas. We have also physical parameters up until hydrochemical analysis. On top of this management program, we have also developed, we have the database for the use, which comes on top of this information.
De gestion des ressources en eau de cette application. Et en plus de cela, on a une base documentaire.
We also have a documentary basis and a documentation center, and at this center we are beefing it up and increasing it and improving it from a digital standpoint. Almost all works and documents are shared and stored and shared on site or on web, all of which strengthens our information system. Next slide, please. But the system also includes some weaknesses. One has having to do with the common data reference. We have an HR code. From an administrative standpoint, we have also a problem with respect to the administrative codification. We are working to stabilize the situation, and we are working with the relevant services in order to improve this codification. There is the existence of several systems that are often not in a connected, and this raises a lot of problems having to do with the processing of data. Another aspects on which I'm going to dwell, and the person speaking before me have talked about it, is mostly the use of remote sensing and satellite imagery. I think this aspect we are seeing to improve in it, because as you have heard in my earlier slides, we do have a hydrometric and piezometric network. We do have, but you know, these networks often are damaged, deteriorated, age-worn, with very difficult access routes, and the use of the remote sensing can improve monitoring. Always to improve our information system with the support of the OIEau, which is the International Office for Water Information. This is a system which is based on the decentralized aspect, i.e., each operator is the owner of their base, manages their base, but we set up a common platform on which we can exchange data and also share. This system is now being developed, and we hope that by year's end, with our partner, the International Office for Water, we will be able to finalize this. Outlooks-wise now, if I may, with the support of the World Bank, in the next days, we're going to develop the use of intelligent or smart meters in some catchment areas to give it on a real-time basis. We are also, within the framework of our activities on the water, how we can digitalize our documentary basis and to put them in the form of a network. We're also working with some partners for our monitoring network as to how to automate, how to further automate our stations. And I think this is on the right track, and in a couple of months from now, we'll be having the results. That is, so this is, as the crow flies, quickly what I wanted to share with you about the evolution of our information system and at the national level with respect to the monitoring of water resources. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you very much, Mr. the Director of the DPGRE, Mr. Niokhor. And likewise, our thanks go out to the three speakers before him for the quality of their presentations. Now, after the 5 testimonials, excellent presentations that we have had so far, I'm now going to give the floor back to Paul Haener, who has the results of the poll that you have responded to a moment ago. He's going to read them out to us, by way of introducing the Q&A session that I will open right after that. Paul, we are ardently waiting for the results of the
thanks a lot.
poll.
And thanks a lot to all the contributions. So I will ask to Edouard to have a visualization of the results of this survey. So I want to thank you because we have quite 100 of answers. So we have 100, in fact, now 100 of answers, which is quite a very good sample in statistically speaking. So, and it is of course very interesting to see that many of you are facing this issue of data sharing, having access to data produced by various institutions, with 91% of answers saying that there is quite issues on that. Secondly, second question, it is also very interesting to see that as in many cases, 74%, we can see that there is a lack of, so there is a lack of agreement at national level, at transboundary level, with a lack of data sharing agreement between the actors. And this is something that we see really on the field. And it is really a difficulty when we want to support the data sharing between institutions at national level. We are facing in many cases this situation that there is a lack, there is no adapted legislation, there is no agreement, even informal, with strategy, with a lack of strategy at national level to organize really this cooperation. So we consider that this is a key issue that has to be taken into consideration. Of course, second priority is to have tools and to have a capacity to organize this data exchange with a good procedure. So we can see here a lack of procedures, but other points are also very important. The lack of common language that was mentioned by Niokhor previously, the issue of heterogeneity of data, the lack of data in many cases. So we hope that the use of satellite image will contribute to complete a part of this missing data. Lack of IT is less important here, but there is also an important aspect about the training of human resource, about how to organize these aspects. So I think these results are very positive, very interesting, going in what was presented, reflecting what was presented. So I want again to thank you for your contribution to this survey. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Paul, for the presentation of the results of these first questions, with a huge majority of the audience of today confirming the importance of these topics of water information systems. Well, I would like to work on a first round of questions that have picked in the chat, and I will wrap these questions together in order also for them to be translated, and then I will give the floor again to the speakers of today for the answers and the compliments they would like to add to the question, to these first questions. So there was a first question about the role of water information systems in terms of prevention or even resolution of conflicts, transboundary conflicts about water resources management. Another question, very interesting question, I think, about the other difficulties related to water information systems. There are many technical difficulties, but also non-technical difficulties. Do you have any compliments that some of the speakers here would like to add to these questions? And this is one aspect of governance and or human organization that you have already addressed, but probably would be interesting to come back to these non-technical difficulties in the elaboration of water information systems. And related to that, I think we all know that there is a need of capacity development, of capacity reinforcement for the experts in the countries, in the basin organizations. So how do you want to express your experience on this specific aspect? And the last question that I've seen in the chat was about the funding sources for water information systems. This is a very important issue, obviously, and so if any of you has anything to say about that, you are very welcome. So maybe ladies first. Alexandra, would you like to comment and to complement your intervention on these questions? If you are okay to answer first, the floor is yours. Alexandra.
Muchas gracias, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. I would like to touch the issue of the funding, the financing, because this is something that definitely in the implementation of the networks is something that is complex and not very easy to deal with. At this point in time, the financing cooperation we have is a South-South kind of cooperation. In one of the projects, we work with the National Water Agency from Brazil. And on the other hand, we have a limited funding from the Global Environmental Facility, but we are very worried when we think that this type of projects to, for instance, purchase the stations, for everything that depends on the operational side, it is very difficult to access funding, particularly in our countries, given the average income we have as Amazonian countries. But the Amazonian region does not have average income, so this becomes even more difficult. So this is an issue where we should join forces between the different international governance institutions, which they should provide greater funding for the different institutions, not only for non-reimbursable funds. And in this post-pandemic scenario, these resources will be allocated to other sectors, so we must not neglect the area where we work. We saw the direct connection of good water management. We saw how this has an impact, and it does have an impact on this type of pandemic, and this is something we should continue to work on to ensure better and greater funding for this type of actions.
Maybe Niokhor, you would like to now take the floor to bring whatever information and answer to the question that I had just mentioned a moment ago. Niokhor. Thank you. Thank you, my dear Eric. Yes, the information plays a very important role with respect to the prevention and the resolution of the conflicts and the role of the information system. When we take the Convention on Water, the 1992, one of the major principles is the sharing of information. And the sharing of information must take place in a very specific manner. Otherwise, it may lead to conflicts of usage. I'm talking about the river Senegal basin and its sharing information. We share information both upstream and downstream. And this sharing strengthens the cooperation because it makes in order to have information on the basin and to decide. In some basins at the territory. Now, as far as the financing is concerned, I think that here at the national level, what we have set up, every user will have to makes it possible to support the water resources. But as you know, it's not enough. We need to, in terms of information, we need to strengthen, to highlight the water resource management through the collection of data in order for the authorities to be able to support, and that the budget may be implemented in order to follow up. But I think that if these funds emanating or stemming from the fees and the royalties are well managed, that may support the good monitoring of water resources. We are now also implementing the Blue Fund. I'm not going to really delve into the details of this Blue Fund, but suffice it to say that this Blue Fund makes it possible to sustain and support information. So these are, by and large, some of the information that I wanted to share with you. We can hear you. I think that this is the question of sharing of information. This is a central question, as we have just presented you a moment ago. And often, the national hydrological systems need financing. Many are expecting to have financings and fundings hailing from their national budgets. Very often, financing does not come through when it needs to come. And we are trying to put at the center or at center stage the actors that can support the production of their activity, as our colleague from the Senegal has just said. In the Congo-Brazzaville, and with the support and the financing of the AFD and with the International Institute for Water, OIEau, we need to have the private actors also be part and parcel of these activities, and also to introduce major changes in the hydroelectricity fields, and in order to also improve this very activity of follow-up indeed, with the support and the guidance from the central, because this is the National Hydrological Department's activities, and see to it that the private operators, irrigation, drainage, etc., must develop more their activities at the national level, and that also should also accompany these services. So these are reflections. But the problematic is there, and we need the finance. And even when we say we need to share the information, They say we already paid the meters, we don't have the budget, and we have very few means. Can you help us from the regional level? Can you support us? Yes, our role as basin organization is that we mobilize partners in order to have the support. And we have already been able to rehabilitate station in many of our countries. The partners have contributed largely to that. And as I was saying a moment ago, there were about from 30 to 40 stations in situ. We are about 200 today. If we calculate all of these countries, it is thanks to the to the activities and the lobbying of CICOS with the donors that are supporting these national services. So we have to work more on that and to reflect more on the strategies that we need. And we ought. Good evening, Eric. Thank you very much, George.
Alors, je crois que Alexandra n'est plus parmi nous, mais on a bien noté la question
Apparently, Alice is not
qui a été posée.
We did take note of the quite technical question that was asked in the chat box having to do with the irrigated areas thanks to remote sensing. And we would be able, of course, to give her that information. I see other questions pouring in the chat, but I think it's going to be difficult to address them all if we want to stay within the time. I therefore propose to you now to go to the last session or part of our workup today. Now giving the floor with much delight to François Munger, Director of the Geneva Water Hub, who is going to share with us a certain number of conclusion elements at the end of today's webinar. François, I am happy to give you the floor. Thank you, Eric. Can you hear me? We can hear you and see you. Yeah, thank you very much. As you know, the Geneva Water Hub is committed on the digitalization in partnership with you, with RIOB, but also with the organization, the World Meteorology Organization, and several other actors, including the water node in Dakar, of which Niokhor is a director, but it's mostly the OMVG with its integrated development plan works that has initiated our commitment. Our initiative has been developed with a series of 4 or 5 webinars on the digitalization that should lead to and converge towards direct exchanges on the different breakthroughs, on the lessons learned, and the challenges as to the management of data and digitalization of data. As Niokhor said, this is not only in the Senegal. Our water resources are under high pressure because of human development, anthropic use, pollutes water, and squanders or pilfers water, which is exacerbated or compounded by the climate change more than ever before. The acquisition, the management, the modeling of data and water resources, and of course, the use thereof is outright indispensable for the implementation of water policies, for the collaboration, for the security and peace. These key elements have been highlighted by the 3 main world panels, high-level panels that took place on water. High water level panel on water and peace has highlighted the capital importance of data, reliable data, tappable data for integrated water resource management, and over and above that, for water to operate as an instrument of peace and security. That data be exchanged at the transboundary level, that they also support the hydro diplomacy that make it possible also to make innovative finances and a hydro policy which is based and proof-based and fact-based. The smart use, remote sensing, Alice has given us a very good presentation, and the digital transformation are opportunities indeed, but the data management that can only be intersectoral must also meet with and overcome the dispersion, the fragmentation, and heterogeneity of the both actors, players, and sources. Often, the data capital generated by these different players is widely underused, and the production capacities of information for the implementation of policies and finance and plans are being impacted adversely. The digitalization can help to integrate these sources and to promote a systematic approach that would recognize the interdependence of water between the different sectors, between entities, administrative bodies, between cities and rural areas. But the political will is key there, as well as the use of a legitimate or resorting to a more work. In this respect, the river basin organizations, RBOs, have a role to play. Their mandate and their mission, as indicated for OMVZ or AMVH of the Gambia or the Senegal River, gives them these institutions to construct such a digital platform. Water used as a multi-actor development catalyst, and river basin organizations are therefore a favorable terrain for the digital transformation. Quite obviously, while raising up to the challenge of cybersecurity, because if the digital technology offers unlimited possibilities for the management, these technologies are also leading to flagrant risks and abuses, and hence the distributors, the RBOs, must prepare themselves for that. I would like to finish. Before I finish, I wanted to highlight the importance of taking into account, as of the time they are devised, the durability, sustainability of information systems and the necessity of budgeting for them. Because in my life, I have seen a lot of systems that have been set up that has collapsed. And when a system collapses, we lose a history. And we know that in hydrology, we know what the loss of data leads inevitably to inefficiency. So it is with these couple of words that I wanted to finish. But before I do so, I would like to thank INBO, the International Network for Basin Organizations, for the organizing of this event that has worked very well. And thank all of the participants and the basin organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, François, Director of the Geneva Weather Hub, for these.
Merci beaucoup, François.
You know that we couldn't agree more on what you've just said. And I would like to add just a few remarks on INBO's side at the very end of this webinar. INBO's ambition is really to follow up on today's first webinar on this topic about water information systems. We need to dig deeper into certain topics. We need to study further some regions, some other geographies, and we really would like to come back to our network and to our partners with really a program of several sessions dedicated to more specific aspects of water information systems. And we've seen today that the material is very rich and that we will need much more time to address really all the technical and not technical topics that are covered in this vocabulary of water information systems. I would like to stress, among the many subjects that have been raised today, the importance of interinstitutional cooperation. There is a need of this type of cooperation, both at national levels and at transboundary or international levels. There is a need for interoperability between the different public sources of data, and an interconnection, not only technical, physical, but also human. And I think this is really a key point that needs to be addressed before we can address so transboundary and international issues. This is one of the key successes for a shared and efficient water information systems. And it's necessary to formalize this cooperation need into strategic frameworks. Second remark that I would like to focus on at the end of this webinar is really the complexity of the interactions between technical topics with the experts in these technical fields and the human the human necessity to build trust, to build cooperation, not only among different countries when it is the case of a transboundary basin, but also in many cases, we all know that in between different ministries inside the same country. And this is also an important part of the complexity of efficient water information systems. Third idea, we haven't addressed that so much today, but a little. This is the connection between water information systems in the sense of systems addressing issues directly related to water resources, but also to water uses. And among these different types of water uses, I would mention the ecosystems, the environment. You have mentioned, some of our speakers, Alexandra has mentioned also these interactions between water resources, water uses, and biodiversity. All the ecological aspects related to water ecosystems. And there was a question also about ecological flows that we haven't addressed today because of the lack of time. And I believe that this is a type of connection between water security and a broader ecological security that will be a raising issue in the future. So at the very end of these few words, I would like to say that for the coming weeks of this year, we will have a program of different webinars that Edward will be able to share on your screens right now. And so we will try to address other topics before in the coming weeks. The next one will be about climate change, adaptation, and especially the relationship, the difficult relationship between water policies and agricultural policies. We will then in November have a webinar dedicated to basin and city dialogues, and also a webinar related to a European project called Fiber for Water. You can find more information in the internet site of the project. And in December, the issue of the participation of civil society, of different types of stakeholders. And these are the other topics that we would like to address before the end of this year. And so at the very end, I have to thank you, dear public, dear audience. You've been very participative during this webinar. It's always difficult to take all the questions, and it's somehow frustrating also for us to not have the time to address all the questions, but we really would like to work on the questions that we haven't had time to address today in order to build together with other partners a more complete program for next year. So thank you to our very efficient and informative and enthusiastic speakers of today. We are really honored to have you on the floor today. I have to mention that today in this webinar, we had the first largest basin in the world with the Amazon, and the second largest basin in the world with the Congo. So this is quite unusual to have such a high level participation. So thank you very much to all of our speakers. And we've been very honored and pleased to have you on the floor today. And so I hope that you have enjoyed this webinar, and we hope that we will see you again in the next editions. We would be very happy and honored to see you again. And so thank you very much, and we will be pleased also to see you for real as soon as the COVID crisis will enable us to meet physically and again. So stay safe in your countries, in your regions, in your basin, and I hope to see you very soon in real. Bye bye. Au revoir à tous. Hasta la vista. Muchas gracias.